Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report podcast. I'm your host, Vago Muradian. Our podcast is brought to you by Bell. Since 1935, Bell has been redefining flight. Learn more about its pioneering spirit at bellflight.com. Later in the program, Boeing's David Palm on the company's vertical lift programs. But first, joining us is the former Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, Frank Kendall, who's now a consultant and the author of a thought-provoking piece that was more than somewhat critical of the Pentagon's Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, otherwise known as CMMC. The article is up on Forbes and says that it is an idea whose time has not come and never may. Frank, thanks very much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Vago.
And I should note that our cyber coverage is sponsored by Northrop Grumman, which also sponsors our weekly cyber report. Frank, thoughtful, comprehensive article. Obviously, the department under K.D. Arrington's leadership has been moving forward with the cybersecurity maturity model certification, a very cumbersome name, but the idea is to try to improve the cybersecurity of defense and aerospace contractors, try to make it cheap, and try to build this sort of certification army that can go out and quickly certify the companies that need certification. You have a list of criticisms you make about it. Talk to us about what your leading concerns are about this approach and why you think it's not only not going to work, but likely should be scrapped.
First of all, I applaud the effort to improve cybersecurity. I mean, I did a lot in that direction myself when I was in office, and I think this whole effort is very well intended, and I think it's pursuing a very important objective for the department and for the country. When I first heard about the concept of CMMC, I didn't have any real fundamental problem with the idea of certification or layers of higher capability in cybersecurity. What worried me a little bit was the idea that the department was going to outsource this function. And it was going to use the certification as a criteria to allow people to be awarded contracts. I made a technical error in my article. I indicated that people wouldn't be allowed to bid. They actually, I think, are intending to let people bid, but people would have to take the risk associated with getting a certification and do a bid and use their B&P money, the bid and proposal money, in anticipation of getting a certification. I think a lot of people wouldn't want to do that. But in any event, you can't get a contract until you've got a certain specified level of certification. So essentially it's taking out of the hands of the government a determination as to whether a contractor is qualified to bid on something or not. And I wasn't comfortable with that. As I dug into it and got a greater understanding of the details of all this, there are two or three things I reacted to. One was the complexity of it, the 5 levels. I'm not sure the department really needs 5 levels. I think it could be much more simplified than that. This is only for unclassified information, right? There's a total different system for classified. And then the structure, the large bureaucracy that was being created. There's a board being created that oversees an accreditation body, which I don't think has really been staffed yet. That accreditation body accredits assessment organizations, which then, I guess, train and hire and employ licensed certifiers, assessors, who then go out and actually do certifications with industry. So it's a really large structure being created, and the scale of this is huge. The website for the board talks about 10,000 assessors. It talks about 350,000 contractors. So this is a massive enterprise and a massive undertaking. And the way it's structured financially is that the firms who need the certification have to pay for it. They pay the assessors to come in and give them a certification. It's a little bit like if you're buying a house and the seller pays for the certification and hands it to you and said, "See, I'm qualified, the house is fine." I'm not comfortable with that. I think that's an inverted incentive to some things that I don't think are good for anybody. I also think that there's been a very serious underestimation of the cost of all this. The number $3,000 for a certification has been tossed about. And I think that if you're going to do serious audit of somebody's cybersecurity posture, for a company of any size at all, that's a tiny fraction of the amount that would be required to do a meaningful job. Department, to some degree, recognized how big this thing they were trying to create was. They're not going to implement it fully until 2026. And I think they're not really as far along as they would need to be to actually put this thing in place. It's really a good time now to reassess all this. And I think the better it is, frankly.
And you're also concerned about the prospect of mischief happening, where one of these certifying companies could go to another company. If you're not going to be able to bid on contracts by not having the certificate, then they may strike some sort of side deal, right? A big company may tell the little certifier, hey, please, I'm bidding on contracts here.
The
right?
ethics of this and the fact that you're paying somebody to come certify you and the independence of that operation really lends itself towards the possibility of some sort of mischief. All right, I'll just put it that way. And then there's the whole question of to what degree does the government want to rely on this? It has no direct control over it. And it's being given essentially, I'll call it a piece of paper that says that this contractor has this level and can now bid. But the government still is going to impose its own cybersecurity requirements through contracts on an industry. That's the system I put in place, basically. And I think there are flaws with that system. They need to be addressed. What I would recommend is, first thing is, let's go see what we can do to fix the system we have. And at the end of the day, the government needs an enforceable way to get industry, to get firms to put in place the type of cybersecurity that is needed to protect the government's information the government cares about, which, and again, is unclassified, generally sensitive information. So I think the first thing I would do is I would look at ensuring that the standards are clear so that it's not confusing to industry what they have to do, and ensure that they are consistently applied. Government, Defense Department's a big organization, and a lot of rules like this, if they're not clear in particular, get applied very differently by different people at the operating end of the spear, so to speak. And I would strengthen the enforcement mechanism. I mean, you've got the Defense Contract Management Agency basically enforces our contracts with industry. And if it doesn't have the capacity to do that job and is overly relying on self-certifications by industry that says, I'm fine, don't worry, then we need to strengthen that. We need to hire more people to do that job and train them and do a better job. Instead of doing those things, this new system essentially creates another total new bureaucracy outside of the DoD to do essentially what it really should be doing itself, enforcing its contracts. So my recommendation would be to, first of all, simplify the levels, think about what you really need, and make it as simple as possible, make the standards as clear as possible, and then use your own enforcement mechanisms that you already have. If they need to be strengthened, strengthen them. The other thing I would do is, I think it would be good in general if there were better and more reliably applied cybersecurity standards throughout our economy. And the National Institute of Standards and Technology is, taking a leadership role in terms of defining those. I would have no problem at all with a broader industry-led certification standardization effort beyond the Defense Department. And one of the things that I find troublesome about this is that the Defense Department is trying to create its own dedicated cybersecurity certification system. I think we need one as a nation. I think it would be a valuable thing to have. It's like good housekeeping seal of approval, if you will. And there are other analogies you could make. But the DoD should take the lead in the interagency and with industry, and working with industry across the board in trying to establish a national capability like this that would be useful for in general, not just the Department of Defense contractors.
And what's the best way to do that? Because time and again, anybody who knows anything about cybersecurity has been making the case for more than 15 years now about the need to have, even longer, some form of fire safety standard like thing. And the issue was, well, that's going to cost too much money and we can't afford to do that, or it's too much of a nanny state and getting into. But at the end of the day, this intellectual property is what China is interested in, and there are vulnerabilities that exist throughout the supply chain and society that can be exploited. What's the right way in quick order for us to structure this kind of security, right? Because that's what the NIST standards are effectively, right? To be some form of unified approach to this. And yet we've still continued to sort of futz around instead of applying it. What's the right way and the right speed with which we should do this, and the right way to do this in partnership with industry to make sure that you're getting, that everybody at the end of the day is either equally happy or equally unhappy about what everybody had to do?
Yeah, I think that the answer to that is market incentives, and to some degree they already exist. People don't want to put their money in a bank that's not safe, and the financial industry develops security standards to a pretty high level, frankly. We do see breaches. It's often information like credit card numbers and so on coming out of retail or other operations. The market's got to demand a certain level of security, and that helps to a degree. It helps some places more than others. It doesn't help so much with things like critical infrastructure, and I think there the government needs to be involved, and the critical infrastructure is a lot more than just the Department of Defense. It also is going to apply increasingly as we field 5G and Internet of Things and things like autonomous vehicles, where we're going to want to be sure that those information systems that drive all those things are reasonably cyber secure. So I think that there's a role for government here, and I think there's a role for industry, and I think at the end of the day, a combination of market incentives plus some things that are just done in the national interest is the right answer. But it will take leadership. It's going to take leadership from the government to bring the necessary parties together and to get this done. It's also going to take a demand from the customers in the market that these systems be secure to at least a reasonable level.
In 30 seconds that we have, should the department and should the government be paying for people to secure their infrastructure? Is that actually an investment that makes sense, given how much it costs for this technology to be breached?
The short answer is yes. It's a cost of doing business, and the government should cover reasonable costs of doing business. So, particularly if it imposes unique requirements, right? But cost of doing business are just that, and businesses have to recover those costs, and the only way you can recover them is through the prices that you charge your customers. So, yes, is the short answer.
Frank, always a pleasure having you on. Thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Hope you and yours stay well, and look forward to having you on again soon.
Thanks, Vago. Always good to be with you.
Take care, sir. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
And joining us now is Dave Palm, the Executive Director of Business Development and Marketing for Vertical Lift Programs at Boeing. Dave, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Vago. Good to be here.
You're joining us from sunny Mesa, Arizona, home to a very, very rich aviation heritage, obviously from the McDonnell Douglas side of the business, but of course, under your wing is also some traditional Boeing and VERTOL programs. Let's start with the impact from COVID-19. Everybody in the industry, across government, and indeed around the world, are feeling the impacts. Talk to us a little bit about what you guys are doing to make sure that this massive global enterprise you guys have is delivering for customers around the world.
Hey, well, thanks, Vago, and it's a pleasure being with you here today. And before we start, I would just like to say how disappointed we are we could not join you in Nashville this year for the Army Aviation Association of America Show and Conference. Every year we look forward to not only engaging with our U.S. Army customers, but it also allows us the opportunity to thank them for their service and for our service to our country and the world. This year, as the COVID pandemic unfolded, we've seen countless U.S. Army and National Guard members step up like never before, and from building hospitals to treating patients, or even stocking shelves at the local supermarkets to ensure we have food we need to push through this. So on behalf of the Boeing company, I'd like to offer our heartfelt thanks to all the service members out there listening today who are keeping us safe and healthy.
That's a great message, and really did wish that we could have been doing this live and in person, but we're trying to do the next best thing, which is manage to connect with some of the key folks from the Army aviation enterprise and the industry that supports it.
It is a new normal we're all living through, and we're learning how to do things differently. So It's teaching us some things, and we're seeing some opportunities on how we may be able to do things better in the future. But to address your question on COVID-19 impacts, as you heard Dave and Greg state on our earnings call earlier today, the impacts to our commercial business have been widespread and enormous, and we expect the recovery to take at least 3 to 5 years before we get back to pre-COVID-19 levels of commercial aircraft production. With that said, we're looking at all areas of cost for opportunities to ensure we maintain the liquidity levels in the business that we need to run the enterprise. Boeing, however, is very fortunate to have a diversified portfolio of businesses, and the defense side of the business provides approximately 45% of Boeing's annual revenue. And we expect that percentage to grow over the next several years. So we're not taking our foot off the pedal on the vertical lift investments we're making to ensure we maintain our market leadership for years to come.
And you guys obviously are partnered with Sikorsky on the FLRAA aircraft as you guys are both competing against Bell for those final contracts on both future armed reconnaissance as well as the future long-range attack aircraft. Let me ask you about some of the lessons you guys are learning through your operations. The Navy Acquisition Executive Hondo Gertz has made clear that while this is going to be a challenge and there are going to be program slips, there are also ways to improve the Navy acquisition organization, perhaps be more effective by traveling less or to do things more efficiently. What are some of the things you guys are recognizing during this period that you guys think are going to be competitive advantages going forward?
Top of the overwhelming disruptions to our business and our lives, we're adapting to new ways of living and working and doing business, both with our partners internally as well as our customers. The challenges facing the entire aerospace and defense industry are enormous, but we believe there's opportunities, as Hondo indicates, where we can take advantage that will help us emerge stronger, more leaner, and more focused in the future. We're looking at all opportunities for as we transition here. A lot of the folks are working virtually, so we're using new tools like Zoom and WebEx and other areas where we can collaborate virtually. And yeah, we are seeing a significant reduction in travel. And so this will probably be something that we continue to see, as we come out of COVID-19. We're going to be looking at ways to do things differently and more productively.
I think that's something that everybody will be struggling with to decide, who are the people on the team who absolutely have to travel and maybe who doesn't. One of the points Hondo and other senior executives have made is that it's a little bit easier for those teams that are formed and everybody really knows one another, and maybe that will change travel. Let me ask you a little bit on your production facilities. You guys have done a deep cleaning of several facilities, taking a pause in production. You guys certainly did that at your Philadelphia facility, which is home of not only the longtime home, the old locomotive factory in Ridley Park outside Philadelphia, which has always been the home of the CH-47 line, but also fuselage assemblies for the V-22, which you're partnered with Bell on. Talk to us about where you guys are on production and how the supply base, where we are on just the simple manufacturing of systems, whether it's there in Mesa or whether or not it's in Philadelphia.
As you know, the Philadelphia plant was closed for 14 days, 2 weeks, to ensure that we did not have any COVID-related issues. And we, as we continue to open the production facilities, we've done a lot of things to implement new procedures to protect our employees, including enhanced cleaning of high-touch areas, temperature screenings, physical distancing techniques, and we've issued masks and PPE to all of our employees who have to work in close proximity, and of course hand washing and hand sanitizing stations throughout the office spaces. we're back to work now, and we are operating at full capacity in Philly. And I can tell you that we're monitoring the situation on a daily basis. Our supply chain is stepping back up. We are running at pretty much full capacity right now in our production facility in Philadelphia, as well as Mesa.
So let's take a quick tour of your guys' important programs. Obviously, the H-64 Apache line is something that is coming out of the great state of Arizona. You've got Chinook and V-22, an expansion of that program, certainly replacing the U.S. Navy's C-2 Greyhound carrier onboard delivery fleet as well in the CMV-22 variant, which is going into test right now. As you guys prepare to start deliveries to replace the COD fleet, I think in 24, if I recall correctly. Give us kind of a update. Let's start with the Apache, where you guys are on U.S. Army programs, but also international programs, since that's the benchmark attack helicopter for a lot of the ground forces of some of our closest allies.
Well, as you know, the Apache's been in the U.S. Army inventory since the early 80s and has remained the most lethal attack helicopter in the world. Along with the U.S. Army, 16 global defense forces operate the aircraft today. There's over 1,200 Apaches operating around the world, and I can tell you the aircraft continues to be very relevant because of the Army, U.S. Army's continuous modernization and capability upgrades throughout the years. The latest model is the 64E, the 64 Echo, and that is clearly the most advanced combat helicopter ever to enter production and operate in the highly complex multi-domain battle space. Just this month, we announced that Boeing has delivered the 500th E model, just 9 years after its first delivery in 2011. 7 of our 16 global customers operate the E model. And we continue to see strong demand signals from allies around the world. We have about 18 additional active campaigns ongoing right now throughout the world. And we're seeing customers in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, all looking to the Apache's capabilities to strengthen their fleets. Right now, we're in the final phases of the first multi-year contract for 268 aircraft with 150 options, and we're working closely with the Army on the next multi-year contract, which will bring production out through 2026, and with the international sales for many more years to come. So we're excited about the future of the Apache, and we continue to work with our Army customer to ensure it remains relevant well into the future.
And let's talk a little bit about the Chinook program as well. Another benchmark aircraft in service with some of our closest allies and partners as well. You guys are working on the Block 2 variant. The U.S. Army did want to put a pause on that airplane, but I think Congress ultimately had different ideas on what should happen there. And in part was because you guys had built the strategy of the airplane around the Army's original decision to sort of delay upgrades to the existing fleet to try to get to that higher capacity, higher cargo aircraft. Talk to us about where you guys are now with the U.S. Army on Chinook, and with an eye to also updating us on what's going on the international scene, given so many countries keep coming back to you guys either for new aircraft or to remanufacture the aircraft they already have in inventory.
Well, Vago, you know, for over half a century, the Chinook has been the medium to heavy lift aircraft of choice for many of our customers worldwide. There's over 950 of these aircraft operating around the world today. And, you know, as you mentioned, the latest upgrade is the Block 2, which will provide more lifting power and allow the aircraft to perform in higher altitudes and higher temperatures, delivering much needed capability to the warfighter. Block 2 is focused on increasing payload, providing commonality across the conventional Army and special operations fleets, and creating a foundation for future upgrades. The U.S. Army has indicated they're going to fly the Chinook well into the 2060s. Some of the upgrades have been the advanced Chinook rotor blade, which provides 1,700 pounds of additional lift to the aircraft. So it's a tremendous capability upgrade to the aircraft, and we're excited that the Special Operations Command, we're currently under contract with them for the MH-47G Block II aircraft. That's first out of the gate for the Special Ops variant. And that delivery of the first production MH-47G is slated for later this year. We continue to develop the CH-47F Block II. That's in EMD right now, and it's in flight test down here in sunny Mesa. I see it flying over my house every day, and I cheer it on. So we're looking forward to the Block II program continuing into the future.
It's the sound of freedom, Dave. It's the sound of freedom.
It sure is. On the international side, we do see significant demand signals for the Chinook's capability worldwide. We're seeing, countries like Germany who are looking to replace up to 44 of their aging 53s. They're looking very closely at the Chinook right now, as is countries like Israel, who also fly the 53, are looking at replacing that fleet with Chinooks. In addition to that, we have over 20 international campaigns ongoing throughout the world, and like I said, we see significant demand for Chinook well into the future.
Do you see the 53K that Sikorsky has developed in part to satisfy the United States Marine Corps Navy requirement, but also very much in keeping, if you talk to the Lockheed guys and Dan Schultz, they're talking about Germany, Israel, and maybe even some Chinook customers coming over to their side. How do you think some of these competitions are going to break?
Well, the 53K is a very capable aircraft. It has tremendous lift capability. But, we think the Chinook provides a more versatile capability. The 53K can lift a lot, but only a handful of the missions require that much lift. So, with the multi-mission capability of the Chinook, we think it's a great fit for these countries, but we also understand 53K provides significant capability.
Are you concerned at this point at all at some of the sharp decreases we're seeing in defense spending, whether it's trimming sales in South Korea, in Malaysia, European countries, and even concerned that the United States may be dialing back as well, given the extent of stimulus packages that nations are putting together in the grips of what increasingly is looking like the worst economic challenge the world has faced since the Great Depression? Do you guys have any sense now how many of the prospects that even just a few weeks ago looked strong or promising that today look maybe somewhat less promising?
Well, we look across the market at 10-year view, and right now the 10-year market for military vertical lift products is large, but it's remaining flat. It has a compound annual growth rate of slightly negative over the next 10 years. So that means that we're in a take share market environment. If we're going to grow our business, we have to take share away from other competitors. So we are seeing some customers look at moving some of their campaigns or some of their requirements to the right, but we haven't seen any real impact as of yet as a result of COVID-19. But we expect that there will be some pressures, and we expect that there will be some countries who are going to focus more internally on their society issues than their defense issues. But we haven't seen that yet.
Let me take you to your partnership with Sikorsky on future vertical lift. Talk to us about how you're working with a company that otherwise would be a rival, but you're competimated on this. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys are working together on FLRAA and FARA to make sure that you guys beat Bell in this.
Well, as you know, the Future Vertical Long Range Assault Aircraft, or FLRAA, That's going to replace the Army's aging fleet of H-60 aircraft over the next 25 to 30 years, and we expect that it will replace roughly 2,000 of these aircraft. The Lockheed Martin, Sikorsky, Boeing partnership is very strong. You know, we're two companies that provide a significant amount of Army aviation capability. We have tremendous production capacity, and great engineering skills, as well as a very good insight into our U.S. Army's operating program. So we're happy to be teamed up with Lockheed on this program. We do compete with Lockheed in other areas, but like you said, we are competimates. The program is now transitioning from a technical development program to a program of record. And in March, we were down selected for the FLRAA Competitive Demonstration and Risk Reduction Program, CD and RR program. And that will extend over the next 2 years and will help the Army's requirements for the program of record be informed for down select in 2022. So we're 2 years away from a down select there, and we're working very hard. You know, the Defiant technology demonstrator has accomplished 17 test flights and continues to progress through its rigorous flight test and envelope expansion program. It is a truly revolutionary design that will provide capabilities never seen before in a helicopter. I'm sure you've seen it, Vago. The compound coaxial main rotor combined with what we call the propulsor on the tail of the aircraft. That's going to allow it to achieve high speeds to get our troops to the fight, as well as an incredible ability to maneuver around the battle space once they get there. So we're ramping up flight test activity, and over the next several months, you can expect to see some key test points achieved that will provide our Army customer with the confidence that we can deliver the FLRAA aircraft that is survivable, affordable, and has the capabilities the next generation of Army soldiers need to dominate on the battlefield.
And we talked to Sikorsky's Jay Macklin, who talked about how both of the programs from a Sikorsky standpoint are feeding into each other to achieve that kind of capability that the Army demands on both of these programs. Let me ask you one last question on V-22. You guys have had a almost 30-year partnership with Bell on the airplane. Talk to us about what's next on V-22 that goes beyond the COD program.
As you know, the U.S. Navy has now bought plans to buy 44 of the V-22s to do the carrier on deck mission. And we believe that the aircraft, once it gets into the Navy inventory, will begin expanding its mission sets within the Navy. We're also looking at, we have a program in Philadelphia right now where we're bringing the V-22s, the older model V-22s, back through the factory for upgrades and modernization. And we are planning on what we call V-22 Next, which is an aircraft that will take the next level of capabilities that the V-22 has well out into the future. So we're investing in that right now. There are no firm plans for that within the U.S. Navy, Marine Corps, or SOCOM fleets, but we believe the V-22 has tremendous capability and will be in the inventory for many, many years to come. So we're investing in that technology, and our plan is to ensure that there's a next version of V-22 out there.
Dave, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sorry that we couldn't have this conversation in person. Best to you, yours, and your team, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Vago. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks for joining us. Please follow our daily interviews with top government, military, industry, and thought leaders at Defense and Aerospace Report, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter. Follow us on Twitter at DEFAERO Report. That's at DEFAERO Report. Like us on Facebook at Defense and Aerospace Report. And check us out on LinkedIn. Check out our weekly cyber report sponsored by Northrop Grumman and our broader Navy coverage that's sponsored by Fincantieri Marinette Marine. Thanks again to Bell for their generous sponsorship, and we'll see you again tomorrow.